Well, you've probably heard of the five love languages, a framework that's helped millions of people better understand how they give and receive love. And today we're going to explore the side of the conversation that maybe doesn't get discussed as often, which is the men side of it. You know, men and their needs and their emotional needs and their love languages. Because the truth is, when those needs go unmet, the consequences show up in surprising ways. We know this even from the stuff we discuss here on the Man Within podcast: emotional distance, loneliness, strained relationships, and even unhealthy coping mechanisms like pornography. Yet many men struggle to identify what they need, let alone communicate it. So joining us today is Dr. Gary Chapman, the best-selling author of The Five Love Languages. He's the guy who pioneered this whole thing back in the 90s, and truthfully is one of the most influential voices in relationship education over the last 3 decades. And through his work, Dr. Chapman has helped countless individuals and couples build stronger connections by understanding how love is best received and expressed. Today, we're going to break down how men can better understand their own emotional needs, how love languages apply beyond romantic relationships, how to rebuild trust in your marriage, and whether self-care can even help fill some emotional gaps in healthy ways. Dr. Chapman, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be with you.
So in my research leading up to the interview, did I calculate correctly that you're 88 years old?
That is correct. I don't feel like it, but I am.
You don't look it either. You look amazing. And I guess I was doing some math. I was thinking, I think the first edition of Love Languages was 1992. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, so you actually had a fairly established career counseling, coaching, all of that before you published the book and took on another, I guess, a kind of second career path. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had been doing counseling probably, I don't know, 10 years maybe before I actually wrote that book. That was the third book that I wrote, and but it grew out of my counseling because I realized that what made one person feel loved did not make another person feel loved. Yeah. And so people were missing each other. So, yeah. But I had been using the concept once I discovered it for at least 5 years in my counseling before I wrote the book. Yeah.
Got it. And I have to ask, you're 88 years old. I mean, the book has sold millions and millions of copies. Why are you still doing the podcast interviews and promoting the book when I'm sure you could retire and be in the Bahamas and, live a nice peaceful life?
Well, I'm still going and doing the things I've been doing because I love what I do. Actually, 5 years ago, I went. I have my counseling has all been on a church staff. I've been an associate pastor, but one of my major responsibilities was marriage and family counseling. But I went to the senior pastor, 5 years ago, and I said, I think after being on this staff 50 years, I should get off the payroll. And he said, well, Gary, you're not going to leave us. I said, well, we're going to be in town, and I'll still do anything I can to help. And if I'm in town, I'll be here and at church. And he said, look, why don't you just keep your office and keep your assistant, and you do what you want to do. I said, ooh, I like that. So if I'm in town, I'm still here in my office where I am now every day, and I'm still seeing people. But I am gone a lot more and speaking a lot more other places and all. But as long as I have energy, I'm going to keep doing it because this is the ministry God has given me, and I know it's so important, and I enjoy doing it. People asked me when I officially retired, and they had a little, celebration for me. And they, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? I said, well, I think I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing because I like it.
Well, I think that's a blessing. Even that in itself, there's a lot to learn from, finding something you love to the point that, even at this stage in life, it's still giving you just as much joy. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. I don't have a lot of hobbies. I don't golf. I don't fish. Obviously when I'm retired, I could do anything I wanted to do. Yeah. But I'm doing what I want to do. So
yeah, praise God. That's amazing, Gary. I love it. So, you mentioned that you're still counseling couples and helping people, which I think definitely I think it's just continued to add depth to your message and your ministry that has just evolved and expanded over the years. One thing that I've appreciated, because I think I first came across the 5 love languages in my early 20s, so we're talking about 15 years ago, and it was just as impactful then as it is now. It has a timelessness to it, and I'm sure you know this thing's definitely going to outlive you and probably many generations. But I am curious on the counseling side of it. Um, what are some things that have changed, compared to people that were coming through your office in the 80s and 90s when you were authoring the book and coming up with the concept, compared to now? What are some things that have changed with technology and everything else the last little bit?
Well, I think technology has been the biggest thing that has impacted lifestyles.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to marriage and technology, it can be an asset. It can be an asset because people can be half a world away now, and in the military, for example, and they can actually see each other and talk to each other because of technology. So a lot of positive things about technology, but also you can become addicted to technology. And you're sitting, both of you, in the same room, but both of you are on your phones, looking and reading, so forth. And you're present physically, but you're not present emotionally and intellectually.
Yeah.
And I had a man say to me just recently, he said, Dr. Chapman, my wife and I will watch a television program, and when the advertisement comes on, we each put it up. She puts it on mute, and we each get our phones and we go to read our text messages.
It's like a ritual.
Yeah. I said, well, my wife and I sometimes watch a program together, and she always puts it on mute when the advertisements come on. I said, but then we talk to each other.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's what I was realizing. We weren't even talking to each other in the same
Wow.
room.
Yeah, imagine that.
So I think that's a part of it. And then also, of course, technology opens up and makes many things much more accessible that used to be not as accessible.
Yes.
Particularly in the sexual area. And so I think that's a difference today from when I wrote the book. But the human need to feel loved is still basically, because it's a part of human nature. That, and almost everyone agrees that one of our deepest emotional needs is the need to feel loved by the significant people in our lives. And if you're married, the person you would most like to love you is your spouse. And if you feel loved by your spouse, life is really beautiful. But if you feel like they don't love me, they wish they weren't married to me, life begins to look pretty dark. And I think just like with children, and the same principle is true with children, of course. I like to say that I believe in every child there's an emotional love tank. And when the love tank is full, that is, they genuinely feel loved by the parents, the child tends to grow up emotionally healthy. But when the love tank is empty and they do not feel loved by the parents, the child tends to grow up with many internal emotional struggles. And the teenage years often goes looking for love, and sometimes in the wrong places. And I think the same principle is true for husbands and wives. When you don't feel loved over a long period of time by your spouse, just as much of the misbehavior of children grows out of an empty love tank, much of the misbehavior of adults grows out of an empty love tank. And so we can be far more tempted, by someone we meet at work that's kind to us and speaks tender words to us. And that's how affairs get started. And I'm not excusing affairs, because I don't think affairs should ever take place. But I understand emotionally, how it happens. They're operating out of an empty love tank. So that's why it's so important for husbands and wives learn how to meet this emotional need for each other and choose to do it. So that's why I think this book has been so helpful and so popular.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree. It's funny what you just described, because in my coaching practice, Deep Clean, where we're helping guys with pornography primarily, I share my own story. I had a 15-year addiction to pornography, and through counseling, through the work of the Holy Spirit, a whole bunch of things, I pieced together exactly what you said, which is that I grew up with a relatively empty love tank, and not because my parents weren't loving, but there was a mismatch there in how love was expressed versus how I received it. And that was chasing girls as a teenager. And then I was kind of early days of some of these digital and technological advancements. And that's what got me into pornography. And I had no idea what I had came across, but it really changed my life and worked my brain. And I had a lot of deprogramming and unlearning to do that. I'm grateful that I was able to figure out, especially before I entered marriage. but a lot of the guys that we work with are figuring this out while they're married and everything else. And so I'm wondering if you could talk to that, maybe even connect the dots a little bit more for people who understand 5 love languages over here as like, this is a good way to improve my marriage. What's the connection there? Why is it that this has a correlation with somebody that might be engaging in pornography or some other compulsive behavior that they're trying to get rid of or they don't want in their life?
Well, I think if in the marriage, the spouse, the wife, is not communicating love to them in a way that's meaningful to them, that is, she's not speaking their love language. She may, in her mind, love him, but it's not connecting with him emotionally. Then if he runs into pornography, which, as you know, it's terribly easy to run into it just without even trying almost.
Yeah.
Then once you get there, then it begins to feed that sexual part of the man. And so he's really turning there to find sexual fulfillment rather than sexual fulfillment with his wife. And that's the great tragedy of the whole thing. I just, it's so sad. And I say to men, why do you want to live in an unreal world?
Yeah.
Because that's what pornography is. It's an unreal world.
Yeah.
That's far more important for you to learn how to speak your wife's love language. You say, well, she's not loving me. Okay. Listen, God loved us when we were sinners. You can love your wife when she's a sinner. So that's why let's you focus on meeting her need. And you can discuss, of course, you discuss the whole love language thing with her. Hopefully you can both, get the concept. But you love her whether she's loving you in your love language or not, because love stimulates love. I mean, the Bible says we love God because God first loved us. We didn't start it. God started it. We just responded. And that principle works in a marriage. You speak your spouse's love language over an extended period of time, something happens inside of them because you're meeting that emotional need and they're drawn to you. And so, yes, we've all agreed that you can't change your spouse, and that's true, but you can influence your spouse. And we do every single day. We either have a negative influence or a positive influence. And speaking their love language over a long period of time is the most powerful influence you can have on your spouse, even if they're not loving you, because your love will eventually break through to them. And then they're going to begin reciprocating. So I've seen it happen over and over again. I usually ask people to do a 6-month experiment, not a 6-week experiment, 6 months. You speak their love language, let's say at least once a week for 6 months, and let's just see what happens. Over and over again, I've seen that other person begin to reciprocate. So yeah, it's powerful. Love is powerful.
Yeah, and that is I think it's so profound because it's so counterintuitive. I think we get in our little, she's not doing XYZ for me, I'm not going to do XYZ for her. And once she gets her act together, then we kind of go that back and forth. And so I love that. Just lead, just take ownership, make the first move. 6 months. So this is not a flash in the pan kind of experiment, right? You have to be committed to this thing. Yeah. And it's very similar with even what we talked about here when guys are quitting pornography or anything else. This isn't about a quick fix and a gimmick to try to get you, like a miraculous turnaround. We want a mature development here, and that does take time. But in the process, really, really good things happen. For a husband who, so we kind of mentioned, husbands that may be caught up in pornography, and maybe they're even connecting. Okay, it's actually because I'm not really getting love the way I want to in the marriage. So we've talked about that. Take the first step and speak her love language. Be the bigger person, so to speak, or be the man about it, and take that step. And eventually, you will start to get it back. It's just a matter of persisting. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I do have a question about.
I was gonna say, we are selfish by nature. I mean, self-centered. Yeah. And there's a good part to that. That means we eat right, we get sleep, we get exercise, we try to take care of our bodies. We're self-centered. But when that self-centeredness comes to an attitude of selfishness, which is the attitude, I'm in this relationship for what I can get out of it. That's selfishness. That's the opposite of love. Love begins with an attitude, not a feeling. And the attitude of love is, I choose to enrich your life. I choose to do whatever I can to help you become the person you want to become. That's love. It's an attitude. Now, it has the emotional dimension, of course, but it starts with an attitude. And so if you choose, and here's the thing, especially with Christians, we have God's help, because Romans chapter 5 and verse 5 says the love of God is poured into our hearts by the Holy Spirit. So we can say to God, Lord, you know, I don't have positive feelings for my wife because she's just not meeting my needs. But I'm going to open my heart and ask you to pour your love into me, and I'll be your agent for loving her. Wow. You have the help of God. You see, again, it's attitude. And so that's why this can be successful. It's not just that you're trying hard to do something that you really don't want to do. You're choosing an attitude of love rather than an attitude of selfishness. And in that attitude of love, you have all the help of God.
Wow, that's really profound. So a lot of husbands in this position are also trying to rebuild trust. They're trying to earn trust back because, watching pornography has hurt their spouse. Their spouse wants to trust again. I have to imagine, I don't know, would you doctor that advice at all for rebuilding trust, or is it more or less the same? Speak their love language, do it for 6 months and watch what happens. Anything you would add into that in terms of rebuilding trust?
I think the other thing I would say is, forgiveness does not restore trust. I mean, you can confess, to your spouse, and they can say, okay, honey, I'm going to forgive you. But it doesn't rebuild trust. How many times have I heard this in my office, where she says, Dr. Chapman, I've forgiven him, and that's why we're here trying to get help on our marriage. But she said, but I have to be honest with you, I don't trust him. And I say, welcome to the human race. Forgiveness does not restore trust. And I say to him, if you want her to trust you again, which I'm sure you do, then you need to be trustworthy. So here's some suggestions I make. You say to her, honey, anytime you want to look at my computer, it's yours. Anytime you want to look at my phone, it's yours. If I tell you I'm going over to George's house to help him work on his car, if you want to come over there and see if I'm there, that'll be fine with me. I'm through with deceit. I've hurt you enough. I don't want to hurt you anymore. You take that kind of approach, over a period of time, she'll come to trust you again. See, trust comes when you're trustworthy. And so, those are the kind of things I think we have to do to rebuild trust.
What's your advice to someone on the consistency part of this? Because I find that's where I think a lot of this kind of people get wrapped up. Even the whole idea of just speaking their love language once a week for 6 months. I can imagine guys listening to this saying, "Oh, I can do that." And week 1, it's a breeze, and maybe there's even a little bit of a shift in the mood of their spouse. Week 2, week 3, week 4, but then you're talking about month 3, month 4. You have some hardships, maybe some spats, maybe some stress elsewhere that just diminishes your ability to show up the way you want. Any words of wisdom for someone to be consistent long enough to really get the impact of what we're talking about here?
Yeah. Well, again, I think the most important thing is your relationship with God. That's why I really encourage men, have a sit-down time and a sit-down conversation with God every single day. I don't know, you put it in your schedule where it works best for you. It works best for me in the morning because I'm a morning person. Sitting down with God every morning, reading a chapter in the Bible or reading a devotional or whatever, and saying to God, Lord, I want to walk with you today. I pray that you'll put barriers around me. Don't let me move in the wrong direction, and guide me in my work, in my relationship with my wife. If you have children, my relationship with my children. It's a daily walk with God, and that conversation with God. And I say conversation because some people say praying, but praying is just one side of it. Conversation is two-sided. God speaks to you through his word. You read this chapter in the Bible, for example, and you're saying, Lord, I'm listening. Anything you want to say to me, I'm listening. And you take your pen and underline verses that kind of jump out at you and go back and then talk to God about those verses. And you're having a conversation with God. And if you have a daily conversation with God, you're going to be far more successful over the long haul in breaking any habit that is not healthy. So I just think, to me, a daily conversation with God is so important.
That's excellent. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I think sometimes it gets lost in this conversation. I like one thing that really changed my life, and I try to teach it to any client that I have, anyone that comes through our ecosystem, one way or the other, is about journaling. And the way we teach journaling is really it's written dialogue with God. It's venting, kind of the way that David does in Psalms. We teach guys on how to express their emotions, identify them, because often that skill is lost for men. But then we also talk about the importance of actually putting down the pen and listening. Listening to the Holy Spirit, seeing where He's leading you, how He's even responding to what you're saying, and like you said, that just that back and forth. I think that's so anchoring. Even I had a call this morning with a couple guys, and there's a bunch of wins in there of the guys just having breakthroughs because of their journaling. Because of course, like who would have thunk? Dialoguing with God, talking to God about it, is actually helping their situation. They're getting clarity, stability, and the strength that they need to persist and stay consistent with the things that matter the most to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever we make the decision that we want to break a habit, whatever that may be, and we're talking to God about every day, because the thought, if we already kind of addicted, it's going to take some time to break that habit. Yeah. And if we have that daily time with God, one day at a time, Lord, one day at a time, and so one day we'll end up 6 months and a year and 3 years, down the road,
If a guy is listening to this saying, I think I'm doing okay, I don't think my love tank is running on empty, or everything seems to be all right. Are there any obvious or common telltale signs for a guy that his love tank is running on low? Hey, quick favor before we jump back in. If this podcast has been helping you in any way, would you take 10 seconds and leave a rating or a review on your podcast platform? The reason it matters is because every rating, every review, every like, comment, and subscription helps this show reach more men who are stuck in silence right now, dealing with this on their own. And you never know, something you write could be the reason another guy decides to finally get help and change his life forever. So if you've been getting value, I'd really appreciate it. And make sure you hit subscribe as well so you don't miss any future episodes. We've got a lot more awesomeness coming your way. Okay, let's get back into it.
Well, I think most guys will know it, but I think they can be so involved in work or other things that they've kind of just put that on the sideline, and they're thinking, well, it's not that important. But it is important. And that's why I think conversations with husbands and wives are important. And so I'd say to a guy, if your wife has never read the 5 love languages and you've never read the 5 love languages, that's a place to start. And you both take the quiz. It's in the back of the book, or it's online as well. And then now that you know each other's primary and secondary love languages, and here's something I think will also help, and that is you and your wife have a daily little devotional time together. And I can guarantee you not more than 20% of the Christian men do this. But I wrote a book called the 1 Year Love Language Minute Devotional. It's a scripture verse, a short devotional, and a written prayer. So I suggest one day you, the husband, reads all of that. So you're actually praying out loud in the presence of your wife, because the prayer is printed. The next day, she reads the scripture, the devotional, and reads the prayer. It's an easy way for the two of you to share, biblical truth with each other. And because, so many men, I just can't pray in front of my wife, unless it's just, thank you for the food, Lord. That's pretty easy. but having a devotional like that, it's just, many men have said, Dr. Chapman, this revolutionized our relationship. Because every single day together, and it doesn't take long, get to 5 or 10 minutes, but every single day we're reading the scripture and we're reading the devotional and we're praying out loud, with each other. And so,
I love that.
It makes a huge difference in every other aspect.
Yeah, we had someone on the podcast said this one time, and it might have actually been from a book, but he said couples that pray together stay together. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes to that resource as well, because that'd be great for the guys to get their hands on. So I had a follow up there. I'm drawing a little bit of a blank now, but I know what I was going to ask. So I have to imagine for women, this might be an easier process of like, you take the quiz, you have your love languages, and then they can present it to their husband and say, these are my love languages. Can you help me in these areas? Or can you, speak my love languages more? I'm making a guess, and I'd love for you to correct me if I'm wrong or steer me here, but I would have to guess that for men, that same process is harder. It's harder for guys to say, these are my needs, or this is where I need love expressed. Can you express love this way? Do you get resistance there, Gary, where with people, with guys in particular, having a hard time doing this and actually putting themselves out there just to begin with?
Well, I think if both of you have read the book and both of you take the quiz, it's easier.
Yeah.
Because you both have just exposed yourself to the concept.
Yeah.
You've both taken the quiz. And so he's asking, well, okay, what is your primary and secondary? She said, well, what is yours? And so I think it's much easier if you take the quiz, read the book and take the quiz. But I do think, here's something else I suggest. I mean, once you've done all of that, about every 2 or 3 weeks, you say to your wife, on a scale of 0 to 10, how full is your love tank this week? And she gives you a number. If she says anything less than 10, you say, well, what could I do this week that would be most meaningful to you? And what she says may not be her primary love language that week. It's just that her circumstances, there's another one that would be most meaningful that week. But the very fact that you ask her that question says, I want to keep your love tank full. You're just asking 0 to 10. It's just an easy way, to kind of check in. And then whatever she says, then to the best of your ability, you do it. And if you do that, I can almost guarantee you, she'll start doing the same thing to you. She'll say, okay, well, now, wait a minute, 0 to 10. How full is your love tank this week? And you give her a number. And then she says, okay, this week, what's the most important thing I could do to show you my love? So it's just a way of checking in and showing each other this is life, and we want each to meet each other's need for love.
I love that.
You get this going like this, man, it's going to affect everything else in your life, because when you feel loved by your spouse and they feel loved by you, you've created what God designed marriage to be: a loving, supportive, caring relationship. And you can handle all the conflicts and everything else in a much easier way.
I will definitely attest to that. When my wife and I are speaking each other's love languages, it goes a long, long way. When, we have little kids right now. So whether you have a parenting disagreement or just a conflict you're working through, when those love tanks are full, the outcome is a lot smoother. It's a lot cleaner, and it's a lot more positive. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So I guess a follow-up question there is, obviously love languages is a strong relational framework, like we're talking about in the context of marriage. What's the distribution when, we talked about how important that connection time with God is earlier. So, can you use the love languages there in, making sure that you feel loved by God and that relationship is vibrant and thriving? Your relationship with friends, I know the answer is yes. I mean, I think you've written a book on probably every, dimension of this framework. But I guess I'm curious about the distribution of it. We'll talk maybe about a married person first. What's the percent? No, I don't know. I don't know if you can put a percentage, but you understand what I mean? Like, where do you go, and how do you know where to go first and get that love tank filled? What should that look like?
Yeah, well, I think, I wrote a book called God Speaks Your Love Language. And I looked at 3 things. I looked at how people actually become Christians. And often there's a parallel between their love language and how they became a Christian. For example, in the Bible, Saul on the road to Damascus, remember, he was going to go put Christians in prison.
Yeah.
And God touched him physically, knocked him off his animal, blinded him for 3 days, and talk to him. Now, there are people that have that kind of experience when they come to God. Physical touch is their language. I've heard people say, well, you know, I had started going to church, and then one Sunday at the end of the service, my body started shaking, and I started crying right there in the service. I started crying. I just felt God's arms around me. Well, if physical touch is your language, you might have that kind of experience. Not everybody's going to have that kind of experience, you know.
Yeah.
So I describe that. And then once we become believers, we tend to express our love to God in our words of affirmation is my love language. I will use words to express my love to God. If acts of service is my language, then I'm the one that volunteers to work in the soup kitchen. You just tell me what I need to do, because that's my love language. I'm gonna love God. So I'm trying to help people understand why they're more motivated to do certain things after they become Christians. A lot has to do with your love language. So, anyway, but as you mentioned earlier, this applies in all relationships. I say to parents, for example, the question is not, do you love your children? We love our children by nature. The question is, do your children feel loved? I remember a 13-year-old young man had run away from home. He was in my office. And after we talked a while, he said to me, my parents don't love me. They love my brother, but they don't love me. I knew his parents. I knew they loved him. The problem was they had never learned that he had a primary love language, and they weren't expressing love in his language. So they were loving him, but he wasn't feeling it. See, the same thing's true with a husband and wife. I remember the wife who said in my office, she said, I just feel like he doesn't love me. And he said, I don't understand that. I do everything I can to show her that I love her. I don't know what else I can do. I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I get home from work before she does. I start the evening meal. Some nights I have it ready when she gets home. If not, she helps me. After we eat, I wash the dishes every night. On Thursday, I vacuum the floors. On Saturday, I wash the car, I mow the grass, I help her with the laundry. He went on, and I was asking myself in my mind, what does this woman do? I mean, it sounded like he was doing everything, you know? And he said, I do all of that, and she says she doesn't feel loved. I don't know what else I can do. I looked back to her, and she started crying, and she said, he's right. He is a hard worker, and I appreciate all those things he does. But we don't ever talk. We haven't talked in 20 years. He's always mowing the grass, washing the dishes, vacuuming the floors, always doing something. And that's the first time it dawned on me that what makes one person feel loved doesn't make another person feel loved. He was speaking acts of service in a loud way, but her language was quality time. We don't ever sit down, TV off, looking at each other, talking with each other about life and sharing our thoughts and our feelings and our dreams with each other. She was dying for quality time. He was giving her acts of service. So that's why I think the whole concept of the love language is so important.
What advice do you have for couples who have the same love languages? And I'm asking this selfishly for my own counsel. My wife and I both are words of affirmation, quality time people, and when we first got together and were dating, it was great because it felt like we very naturally spoke each other's love languages. And then we've had a bit of a chuckle over the years. We've been married, it'll be 7 years in September, because her vision of quality time is so vastly different from mine. I think especially at this stage of life with little kids, and I've had a career change and, just a bunch of evolutions. Obviously we change over time, that even though on paper, it looks like, wow, that must be so easy. That's what we hear other couples say. That must be so easy. You guys both have the same love languages. But we basically are just learning them brand new, because the vision of, or her expectation of quality time, what she wants looks so different from mine. Even words of affirmation. She loves it when I take time and I elaborate and it's detailed and, I give specific examples, and I kind of just like a nice short punchy word of affirmation that really hits home, So we've had to work through that. I don't know, any words of wisdom or what have you observed there when it's the same?
Well, that's why I wrote my newest book, which is a follow-up to the 5 Love Language book. Because in that original book, and the reason I wrote it is people have asked me two questions through the years who have read the original book. They said, Dr. Chapman, in that book, you mentioned that in all of these languages, there are dialects. That is, different ways, is what you're talking about, different ways to express that love language.
Dialect. That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
You know. They said, but you don't give us any of the dialects. And the other thing you mentioned is that personality interfaces with when and how you speak their love language. So in this new book, go into that. That's why I wrote it. The title of the new book is called, let's see, what is it? The love language that matters most. That's the title. And I wrote it with Les and Leslie Parrott. You may know them. They've written a lot of books they live in Seattle. Their most famous book is Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. Anyway, we wrote this together. And in this book, we share dialects in all those languages and also talk about the personality and how that interfaces. For example, with personality, here's a wife, her husband's just has his 30th birthday. So she says, I'm going to take you out and celebrate. This is your birthday. And I'm going to drive tonight. I'm going to surprise you. So, okay, so he's all ready to go out to a restaurant, and have dinner with her. They pull up in front of a house he recognizes as a friend of theirs. And he said, what are we doing here? She said, well, they want us to stop by. They go in, and there's 30 people there to celebrate his birthday with him. He is an introvert. An introvert, not an extrovert. He's an introvert.
Right.
She thinks she's hit a home run. Now, he's going to be nice. He's going to laugh. He's going to greet the people. He's going to be fine. But in his heart, he would much have preferred the two of them going out to a nice restaurant and spending that time together. See, that's where, if understanding his personality would have helped her know that's not the best way to celebrate his birthday. Yeah. So I think this book's going to help a lot of people. But people read the title, The Most Important Love Language, and they say, which one is it? Which one is it? And in the first paragraph, we say, the most important love language is the love language of your spouse. Because by nature, we're thinking, my love language, my love language, my love language. Yes. And we're saying the most important is the love language of the other person. So let's focus on them, Anyway, I think that book's going to help people with those two factors.
That's really good. Yeah. I have an accessory question here because I'm thinking about your career. You obviously travel and speaking and lots of attention through what are some practices you've done, like in your own marriage, in your self-care, in your relationship with God. What are some things you've done just to keep yourself on the straight and narrow? Because I think, as you mentioned, we know the stories of people that rise in ministry or elsewhere in business and don't have the safeguards, don't maybe have even the 5 love languages or a framework like that to lean on and keep the right things in place and in check. What are some things you've done, Gary, over the years that have helped you as your ministry's evolved and expanded?
Yeah. Well, the first is what I mentioned earlier, and that is that daily time with God, a daily sit-down time with God. And second has been I'm always reading a book with here and there, whatever free time along the way. I've always got a book that I'm reading on relationships, which just keep different topics in front of me. And I've also had the guideline that I really guard myself in terms of being in private spaces and all with another lady. Now I do counsel ladies by themselves, but my assistant is right there, and she can't hear what we're saying, but she can hear us talking. Yeah. And so and I only had this happen one time, that I was attracted to a lady that came for counseling. I was attracted to her, like a romantic thing. And so at the end of that first session, I'm empathetic with the problem, what you're sharing, but I don't think I'm the one that's going to be able to help you. So I'm going to refer you to another counselor. I think they will be able to help you. I didn't want to put myself in the situation where I'm going to be seeing this lady, every week or every 2 weeks over a long period of time, because at the very sight of her, I had this feeling, this attraction to her. And so I think we have to be careful. We can't kid ourselves. And if we have a feeling, attraction towards somebody in our workplace, for example, and so we try to go get coffee when we see them going to get coffee, or and then we ask them to go out to lunch. I mean, we're walking down the wrong road. Far better to stay away from that person. Don't yield to that thought that you can't keep yourself from being attracted to somebody. I mean, it can happen. But
that's right.
So that's I've always followed that pattern as well.
Is that something you were taught, or how did you have the foresight to obviously identify what's going on? I think anybody could do that. Like, there's an attraction, but how did you know to nip that in the bud so quickly?
Yeah. Well, I'd already made the decision many, many years ago that I was not going to spend time alone with a woman that had some attraction, that I had some attraction for. I just wasn't going to do that. So I was just following through with what the pattern.
It's amazing. What would be the vision fulfilled for you with the 5 love languages? You mentioned it's the 3rd book you wrote. I'm sure it's taken on a life that you probably never dreamed of initially when you launched it back in '92. But here we are all these years later, and the impact continues. What's your vision, and what's maybe something that you're hoping people will continue to do with the love languages beyond even your own life?
Well, I really believe that the love language book and the concept will continue to minister to new generations.
Yeah.
Also, what has surprised me, it's gone into over 60 languages now, published in 60 languages. And almost in every one of those languages, it has become a bestseller for their publisher. And that did surprise me, because I'm aware of cultural differences,
Of course.
but it does seem to me now that these 5 are pretty fundamental to human nature. And yes, they may have different dialects in different cultures, but the languages are pretty human, related to humans of all cultures. And so, that's why I think this concept will continue much longer than I'll be around.
Yeah.
And I think the books will continue long after I'm around. And, I've written several spinoffs from that original book. One of them, of course, is the men's edition, just the 5 love languages for men.
Yeah.
And on many of those books now, we have a workbook that goes with it. And that's where if a group of men are meeting regularly, like in a church, they have a small group of men that are meeting regularly. The workbook is really, really helpful, because you read the chapter and then you go to the workbook and you really apply it in the workbook. Then you get together the next week and talk about it. And where that happens with men, it's amazing what happens in the lives of those men, because they're now being open with each other, and sharing light with each other. But I'm amazed at what God has done. People have asked me, how do I explain, the fact that the book just keeps selling millions and millions of copies. And I say, well, from my perspective, the short answer is God. Yeah. And the long answer is God. I said, I could not have made that happen if I wanted to make it happen. But I do think that it's speaking to one of the deepest emotional needs we have. And when couples read it and they apply it, then they want their brother and his wife to read it, their sister and her husband. So it just kind of goes word of mouth, all over. Yeah. So I'm very, very grateful.
Well, and I'll just very quickly attest to what you said, because we've observed, this was on a coaching call a few weeks ago. Someone was talking about the 5 love languages, and then another guy said, "Oh, what's the 5 love languages? I haven't heard of that." And he said, "Well, actually, for that issue that you just mentioned a couple minutes ago that you're struggling with, the 5 love languages would be perfect." And he sent him the assessment right there in the Zoom chat, and they're going, and he's completing, and he's all excited about it. And we've definitely seen that. And another example of the guys, like you said, guys opening up, having these conversations, which is why the book is excellent, especially the 5 love languages for men. And if anyone wants to do it in their church, definitely would recommend that also. So we'll put links in the show notes for everybody to get their hands on these resources, Gary. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for this incredible message that you blessed us with. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was great to be with you, and I appreciate what you're doing. So keep up the good work. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much.